Today I'm going to look at hard situations that we must face. Things in your life that might be difficult, whether Jehovah is involved in those things, maybe whether he brings them about in the first place. And I'll also give you a bit of an update on my own situation with my health. If we look at Exodus 6, we see that when Moshe went to the children of Israel, they didn't listen to him because of shortness of spirit. That word shortness can mean impatience, and from hard slavery or harsh labor, as I've translated it. We see the word kaseh. The definitions here, we see severe, cruel, grievous, heavy. And the word for labor, or for sometimes it's translated as cruel bondage. The word is avodah. We can see from the definitions here, work of any kind. You might be familiar with the word avodah. And this is why the children of Israel wouldn't listen to Moshe. We know that Moshe is kind of shorthand in the Bible for the Torah, the books of Moshe. The Torah not being law, rather being the teaching and instruction of Jehovah. So they didn't pay attention to what the word says, you could say. So when you have situations in your own life, it can be that because of impatience or shortness of spirit, or because things are so hard that you don't pay attention to what the word says. And that might mean that you don't pay attention to what Jehovah promises. Could also mean that you don't do the Torah itself. You don't follow the instructions of Jehovah because you think that your situation is so hard that you don't have to do those things. We are, of course, all servants of God, and we see that the word avodah can mean service of God. Job says this. He said, "Oh, that my grief were thoroughly weighed, my calamity be placed on the scales, for it would outweigh the sand of the sea. Therefore my words have been rash. For the arrows of the Almighty are within me. My spirit drinks in their poison. The onslaughts of the lower are arrayed against me." So Job here recognizes that Jehovah is the one who has brought all of this on him, and he's saying, if only basically you could understand just how hard this burden is that's been placed on me, you'd understand why my words have been rash. He's answering his friend Eliphaz here. So he says, the reason that I've acted rashly is because all of this was upon me, because Eloah himself, the singular of Elohim, because he himself is against me, therefore I've acted rashly. Of course, we need to temper our own responses and not think that because we've got it hard, or because Jehovah has brought hard things into our life, and we should recognize that it is Him who brings all of these things. We have a duty to listen to Moshe. The shortness of spirit, or the harsh circumstances, even cruel circumstances, as we might perceive it, we have a duty to listen to Moshe, listen to the words of Scripture, and not be distracted by those things that we might justify within ourselves, as Job is justifying here. It is in our weakest moments that we are tempted more easily to forget the words of Yahweh. We see in the wilderness, the congregation, it says they all lifted up their voices and cried, and they wept that night. All the children of Israel grumbled against Moshe and against Aaron, who can be seen to represent the Word, and the Word made flesh, Yeshua. If only we had died in the land of Mitzrayim. Why is Jehovah bringing us to this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should become a prey? And this is, of course, a common refrain with the children of Israel. We see in Exodus 17, there was no water for the people. So what did they do? They strove with Moshe, they strove with the Word. Moshe says, "Why do you try Yehovah?" And the people thirsted there for water, and the people grumbled against Moshe and said, "Why did you bring us out of Mitzrayim to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" And this is, of course, what people do when things are challenging. They immediately jump to the worst conclusion, the thing that would be that they would most like to avoid. They presume that is what the outcome is going to be, rather than trusting in Yehovah. So there's no water. What did the people say? Why has he brought us out here to kill us? Of course, he'd not brought them out there to kill them, as we know, but they didn't know in the situation. They presumed the worst of the situation, instead of trusting in the words of Moshe, in the promises of Yahweh, in the things that he had told them that he was going to do. They didn't trust in those things, so they presumed the worst. And of course we are prone to do the same thing. So ask yourself, in difficult situations, are you asking the equivalent of, "Why have you brought us out here to the wilderness to kill us?" It says in verse 7 that they tried Yehovah, saying, "Is Yehovah in our midst or not?" So what they were doing is they were, they had their need, and they tested Yehovah and questioned whether he was with them. Someone might think, well, if Yehovah is with us, why do we not have water? Why do we not have food? And of course, when hard things come along in your life, you might think, well, if Yehovah was real, if he was, if he's actually Elohim, then the situation wouldn't be like this. In Deuteronomy 8, it says, He humbled you and let you suffer hunger. That whole let you suffer hunger is one verb, brave. And He did it to make you know something. To make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yehovah. That verb, brave, okay, to be hungry, be voracious, and then we see the two forms of the verb. The Kal form means to be hungry. The Hifil form, which is the form used here, means to allow one to be hungry, allow to hunger, or in older language, to suffer to hunger. We see in Gesenius, he says that the Hifil form means to cause hunger. So we might say that Yehovah allows something in our lives, but He is the root cause. So He actually caused them to be hungry. So if there's something hard in your life, it comes from Yehovah. He causes all things to be. Ultimately, He may have caused you to suffer hunger. He may have caused you to suffer in some other way, like He did with Job. But of course, He does it for a particular reason. Going back to Deuteronomy 8, it says that He did it to make you know something, and He does the same in our lives. In Numbers 14:6-9, it says that the response of Joshua and Caleb was to tear their garments. They spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, The land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If Yehovah has delighted in us, then He shall bring us into this land and give it to us. I think that is a thing that people have a problem with. The idea, if Yehovah delights in us, because they've got things in their life that they know He doesn't delight in, so they don't want to rely on, if He delights in us, it will be okay. The idea that Paul expresses in Romans 8, if Yehovah is with us, who can be against us? Only do not rebel against Yehovah, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their defense is turned away from them, and Yehovah is with us. Do not fear them. So they're saying rely on Yehovah. This, of course, should be our response. We shouldn't say, has He brought us out into the wilderness to kill us? We shouldn't look at the outcome that we fear and say, is this what He's doing? We should know, therefore, we're walking correctly before Him, that He is with us. As Charlie said in Torah portion 8, or at this time, I found as I've gone through this teaching that it just makes me realize that it doesn't matter what situations look like in your life. It really doesn't matter. What really matters is if Yahweh is with you or if He is not with you. And that is, of course, all that matters in these hard situations. Deuteronomy 8 gives us some insight as to Yahweh's purposes in hard times. It says, "And you shall remember that Yahweh your Elohim led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness." So this is, of course, said to the second generation who were 20 and below when they came out of Egypt. So they've lived the 40 years in the wilderness while the generation before them has died. To humble you, prove you, to know what is in your heart, whether you cherish his commands or not. So they were not the ones that had sinned against Jehovah when this punishment was brought on Israel. But Jehovah had the purpose in it. And he humbled you and let you suffer hunger, and fed you or caused you to hunger, and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, to make you know that a man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahweh. So it says that Yahweh did it to know what is in your heart and to make you know. So it is, so Yahweh knows something, and so that you know something. Your garments did not wear out on you, nor did your foot swell these 40 years. So although he brought this time upon them, he was with them throughout it. Deuteronomy 7:17-18 says, "When you say in your heart, these nations are greater than I am unable to drive them out. Do not be afraid of them. Remember well what Yahweh your Elohim did to Pharaoh and to all Mitzrayim, all Egypt." And this scripture, this passage, has had particular relevance to me recently regarding my health. My health recently has had a sudden, sharp decline. It was already difficult for me to get around, but recently I've lost pretty much all ability to walk. Even getting from the chair where I sit on the computer into the wheelchair is difficult. It takes quite a while for me to do that with the aid of a pole that goes from floor to ceiling. I have difficulty standing up, which obviously makes it difficult in things like going to the bathroom. Shortness of breath has gotten worse. I can get tired just not doing anything but sitting in a chair. I can get short of breath, and everything becomes a real effort to do. Talking has become a lot more difficult, and Ashley now has to do everything for me. I can't even pick something up off the ground if I drop it, which I'm prone to do. And this scripture was relevant when Ashley was obviously panicked by this. She was fearful about the future because no one wants to be someone's nurse for their entire life, let alone your spouse's nurse, and for them to be disabled. And we considered this scripture. When you say in your heart, these nations are greater than I'm unable to drive them out. Well, we're in a situation where, we can't. It's not a nation that we need to drive out, but we can't do this in our own strength. But we considered the scripture and what it says. Do not fear them. Remember well what Yahweh, your Elohim, did to Pharaoh and all of Egypt. Remember the things that Yahweh has done for you. And throughout this, Yahweh has shown that distinctly that he is with us, ranging from one day he completely removed all of my symptoms so that I was completely healed, which I believe they did in order to show that he can do that if he wants to, and he's responded instantly to prayer. When I was filming the Life After Death series a couple of years ago, when I recorded part 3, I was unable to speak at the end, and I remember praying to Yahweh and saying, if you don't want me to teach your word, that's fine. I don't want to teach it if you don't wish for me to. If you wish for me to, you'll have to enable me to speak, because I'm unable to currently. And instantly I was able to speak it again and finish that recording. Just instantly. There is no way that can happen naturally, to be unable in one moment to pray something and then be able to in the next. When I made the video saying that I was going to stop teaching, he made known to me the day on which I would be healed, and then on that, so I was expecting it when I went to bed, and when I woke up, I was healed in order to be able to teach, and I did that video about having been healed. And he always enables me to teach when I sit down to teach. It's him who makes dumb or deaf. He made man's mouth, so he enables me to teach, no matter what state I'm in. Prior to that, he enables me to be able to do what it is that he's given me to do. So he's always been with me throughout all of this affliction, and that's what we remembered. We remembered the signs and wonders that he's done. Yahovah has given us victory over the enemy, like he did to Israel with Pharaoh and Egypt when the Red Sea came back and destroyed Pharaoh. In Deuteronomy 3:21-22, it says, I commanded Joshua at that time, saying, your eyes have seen all the Yahovah your Elohim has done to these two kings. Do not fear them, for Yahovah your Elohim himself fights for you. So this is the repeated refrain to Israel. You've seen what Yahovah has done. Have faith in him. Now, when things look bad, don't say, have you brought us out to this wilderness to kill us? Because that just shows that you don't know Yahovah's name. Don't catastrophize. Don't leap to the conclusion that is the worst. Trust in Yahovah. Similarly, in Deuteronomy 31:6, Be strong and courageous, do not fear, nor be afraid of them, for it is Yehovah your Elohim who is going with you. He does not fail you, nor forsake you. If you forsake him, he will forsake you. But if you draw near to him, he will draw near to you. And it's only in times of distress that we show that we do actually trust him. It's easy to say that you trust Elohim when you're not being tried. But it's only when you're tried that you prove your faith. 1 Peter 4 verse 12 says, Beloved ones, do not be surprised at the fiery trial that is coming upon you to try you, as though some unusual matter has befallen you. What is translated as fiery trial there is the word process. And you can see there, by a figure drawn from a refiner's fire, calamities or trials that test the character. And you might think, well, why does Yehovah need to test my character? Surely he knows that I am faithful to him, that I shema his voice. Well, what I would give you by way of an example is silver. The silver on the left is what's known as 3 nines fine, 99.9% fine. The silver on the right is 4 nines fine, so 99.99% fine. The difference is only 0.09%, so nothing, not even 0.1% difference. But I think that the silver that is on the right is noticeably different from the 99.9% silver. So we can always be refined. We can always be made better, no matter where we're at in our walk. So if Yehovah decides to bring a test upon you or a trial, it's not necessarily because you've done something wrong. It can just be to refine you that little bit more, or whatever his purpose is. We don't know his purposes in doing these things, but what Peter tells us is that we should not be surprised when these things come upon us as if something unusual has happened. But as you share Messiah's sufferings, rejoice in order that you might rejoice exultingly at the revelation of his esteem. So we are to rejoice in suffering, recognizing it for what it is, that it is actually proof of Elohim working in one's life. We're also told in 1 Corinthians 10, no trial has overtaken you except as is common to man. So don't be surprised at the trial. No trial has overtaken you except as is common to man. You know, in my case, I'm ill, which is common to man. And Elohim is trustworthy, who shall not allow you to be tried beyond what you are able, which I take as a compliment, because the trial has been hard. But with the trial shall also make the way of escape, enabling you to bear it. And this is something that has been true. No matter how bad I've been, Elohim has always made a way for us to be able to continue. He's always been there. The condition that I'm in at the moment if I was to fall over, for example, I don't have the strength in my muscles to get back on my feet, or even really to turn over. Turning over in bed can be difficult. But although I've fallen over multiple times in the past, when it's been a case of if you fall over you won't be able to get up, I've not fallen over. Elohim again, it's like he's created the trial and then he's helping me through the trial. And that is how it will be in your life too. He will always enable you to bear any trial that you undergo. And something that we should remember, Romans 9, but who are you, O man, to talk back to Elohim? Shall that which is formed say to him who formed it, why have you made me like this? Does not the potter have authority over the clay, from the same lump to make one vessel for value and another not for value? And if Elohim, desiring to show wrath and to make his power known, with much patience tolerated the vessels of wrath prepared for destruction, and that he might know the riches of his esteem on vessels of compassion, which he had prepared beforehand for esteem. So we need to remember that he is the potter and we are the clay, and his purposes in whatever situations in our life are his purposes. If he wishes to make us a certain way so that he can show his compassion, he will do that. If he wishes to make us a certain way so that he can show another element of his name, then he will do so. But we can't lay the charge at his door and say, why have you done this to me? He's done it for a particular purpose, to elucidate some element of his character. 1 Peter 1:3-7 says, blessed be the Elohim and Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah, who according to his great compassion has caused us to be born again to a living expectation through the resurrection of Yeshua Messiah from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled and unfading, having been kept in the heavens for you, who are protected by the power of Elohim through belief, for a deliverance ready to be revealed in the last time, in which you exult, even though for a little while, if need be, you've been grieved by manifold trials, in order that the proving of your belief or faith, much more precious than gold that perishes and proven by fire, our fiery trial that proves us again, might be found to result in praise and respect and esteem at the revelation of Yeshua Messiah. Because we don't understand what his purposes are, as long as it results in us being in the kingdom and receiving salvation. It's a good thing. And from Yehovah's perspective, we're very focused on this life, whereas he sees the whole picture. Our faith being tested is necessary in order for us to receive, or for it to be found to result in praise, respect, and esteem when Yeshua is revealed from heaven. And it really just comes down to whether or not you believe the words of Scripture, whether or not you believe Yehovah. If you don't, or you think that you do, but then when you test it, it shows that you don't actually believe that, then you will approach the situation differently. Or if you believe some of Scripture, but the more fantastic promises that are made within it, you don't hold on to, that will be shown. It will be revealed by the fire, so to speak. Psalm 112, 5-7 says, "Good is a man showing favour and lending. He sustains his matters in justice," or mishpat. "For he is never shaken, the righteous is remembered forever. He is not afraid of an evil report. His heart is steadfast, trusting in Yehovah." It doesn't matter what happens. The righteous man is not shaken or not led astray from the path, because he trusts in Yehovah. Doesn't matter how bad we think things are. Our trust is in him, so we know ultimately it is for good. Isaiah 26 verse 3 says, "The one steadfast of mind you keep in perfect shalom, for he trusts in you." And as much as I've been upset by the increased disability, I have always maintained that state of shalom, because ultimately I trust in Yehovah. And when those things arise in our hearts, which they will, remembering what he's done, and who he is and what his name is, keeps you in a state of shalom, a state of shalom that is not understandable to the world, because they think of things as happening mechanistically. They think, well, this is caused by this is caused by the other, rather than understanding that what we experience is from the Father, and trusting in him and knowing his name. James 1 verse 12 says, "Blessed is the man who endures trial, for when he has been proved, he shall receive the crown of life." And that is nothing to most people in the world. You know, if you said to them, well, if you endure this and your faith is proven, then you will receive the crown of life, then that has no potency to them whatsoever. It just doesn't matter. It's just words. What matters to them is what they're undergoing at the time, and alleviating or otherwise that. You can expect the world to have the same reaction as they had to Yeshua. They said he trusted in God. Let him rescue him now, if he will have him. For he said, "I am the son of Elohim." So they basically said, well, if what he's saying is correct, let God rescue him. because they look at things again from the perspective of what happens in this world is the be all and the end all. They didn't understand what Yehovah was doing, what he was achieving, that Yeshua went to the cross willingly. That just wouldn't work for them. It wouldn't compute. So if we go back to the scripture that we started with, Moshe spoke to the children of Israel, but they did not listen to Moshe because of shortness of spirit and from heart slavery. I think it's funny that it says shortness of ruach here, because ruach can mean breath. So this certainly has application for my own situation. They didn't listen to Moshe because of shortness of breath and from hard slavery, because what they were undergoing was hard. Shortness of spirit would be applicable for them. Because it was hard, they didn't listen to the words of scripture. They just passed them by. Moshe being the Torah, the teaching and the instruction of Yehovah. In Exodus 5:9, we hear about this harsh labor, the hard avodah that was laid upon them. Let more work be laid on the men so that they labor in it and not pay attention to words of falsehood, which is what ended up happening. It was because of shortness of spirit and hard labor that they didn't pay attention to what Moshe said. We, when we're tested, we are to pay all the more attention to what scripture says. Exodus 5:22-23, we see even Moshe returns to Yehovah and says, Yehovah, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you send me? For ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people. You've not delivered your people at all. So Yehovah said to Moshe that he was going to deliver the people, and then things got harder for the people afterwards. So that even Moshe comes to Yehovah and says, why have you done it this way? Why have you made it harder for the people? You haven't delivered them at all. And we must guard ourselves against doing this and know that we trust Yehovah. Ultimately, he does deliver them. It got harder for them at the end, but then he delivered them. And the way that he does things, it puts me in mind of Romans 9. Who are you, O man, to talk back to Elohim? He is the potter, we are the clay. He's got his own purposes in doing things the way that he does them, and we shouldn't question him. We should just trust in him if we know his name. Yehovah willing, I'll see you next week.